Hello, hello. Why is elevator music playing? I've got no idea. This is a playlist. Let's talk about Chainsaw Man. Because, oh boy, did I enjoy Chainsaw Man this week. So, the first scene of this entire thing, right? We open with them in the car, and the whole food thing is repeated again. And this is already where a weird thing happened with this episode. It's, Makima, right? Whatever her name is. Makima, however you pronounce it. So, this is where she basically says the whole, dogs that aren't helpful are put down, right? So, at first, when the agents showed up, obviously we're led to believe that, at least to some extent, she is sort of a savior type, right? Where she comes in, saves him, and then she's like, okay, I'll take care of you. Yeah, you're like half devil or whatever, but mostly things are going to be fine, right? But in this episode, and this is already like the first scene of that, where I started to get some weird vibes, right? That this isn't going to really be a collaboration per se. I'll get into it a whole bunch more, but like dropping a phrase that is basically like, if you do anything wrong, we're just going to kill you, that's a bit yikes, right? Obviously they don't know each other and all that, but I'm getting some very weird vibes from her. I do already have very, very long-term predictions that probably make no sense, but we'll get to all that. This is also where the whole Denji thing is set up a little bit. He's a very thirsty boy, which would be on full display a lot more later in the episode as well. Here I just wrote in my notes, is he like developing serious Stockholm Syndrome? I mean, they've been together for like 40 seconds, right? And of course, it's whole tragic past that influences a lot of that, but yeah. He is very much attached to her already. But we also hear that Pochita is very much alive, and that it essentially replaced his heart, which makes me very happy. Because that means we're going to be seeing more of Pochita. I love Pochita. Pochita was very fun. It was very cute, despite being a literal chainsaw. So I very much enjoyed that. Then we get to the actual, like, eating scene, right? We learn her name, it's Makima, and then he asks, like, what kind of guy she likes, and she says she likes, like, a Denji type guy, right? And then the scene of it just being like, dude, that's me. That seriously cracked me up, the way that was done. Again, I talked a lot about, like, the super dark themes last week, right? And a lot of that is continued here, too. Generally speaking, the theme is pretty dark, but the comedy mixed in is one that I'm actually really, really enjoying. We'll get to it when he gets paired up with a few people, but that scene, it just broke me. Like the realization is just like, dude, that's me. It's so good. It's so good. And the fact that we never follow up with that again is just comedy gold. I love that. The fact that we just cut away and that's it. Pure perfection. I did find the whole scene of her actually feeding him a bit bizarre, but you do you, Denji. Another thing I noted down immediately, we cut to the city, right? Get ready for this, because this is going to be a major trend with me in these streams. Every single shot of the city, they're so detailed. Like, if you look even at the background, like the people walking by and the cars zooming past, the animation in this series is just something else entirely. And a small thing, the fact that this is done pretty commonly with live action shows, but the fact that we see like people pass by, and as a person passes by the camera, obviously the camera goes black, right? Because somebody walked in front of it, and that's when we transition into the close-up. Very good, very cheeky. I like that. A very good transition. They then get to the whatever academy it is. Denji goes over his dream, which, again, he's a very, very thirsty boy. Which, I mean, sort of makes sense in his case, right? I mean, he sold organs because he had, like, debts, and then he's fought devils by himself, and, I mean, he's probably as broken as a person can really be. So, I mean, whatever he wants to do, sure, why not? We then meet the Aki Hayakawa, right? The samurai dude. And here, I want to note a very, very small detail that I really appreciated, right? So we see him get the uniform, which, I mean, it's not really a uniform, it's just a suit, but let's call it a uniform. And the thing with these sorts of things is that when you have matching uniforms in series, you can't really express a character through them, right? So in a series like, I don't know, like Harry Potter, for example, all of them have like matching uniforms. So you can't really say that this kid is a rebel because, let's say, his clothes are all ripped up and stuff like that, right? That's just not a case they can do by default. Every single series usually expresses their characters through the things they wear. But because they have matching uniforms, they can't really do that. So I'm really, really excited to see how they subtly like portray who these characters are through their clothes. We've already seen that with Denji, right? He immediately like rolls up his sleeves, his tie is all messed up, and generally he's just unkempt. Whereas the samurai dude is super neat, he's like properly dressed and all that. And then Power, of course, later in the series, she too like has her own little jacket. So that's a cool little detail that I'm excited to see. My cat is once again blessed us with his presence. And this is where I properly got weird vibes from Makima. The closest comparison I'd say is that she seems to be extremely manipulative, and it feels like she is like deliberately pressing all the buttons on Denji to get him to do whatever she wants. And I got serious Gus Fring vibes from her. She seems very, very, very sus to me. I don't know. This may be totally off base, but I don't think she's a very good person. I feel like she is very, very manipulative, and I think she's playing Denji like a fiddle. I have a very, very far off prediction. I guess I can talk about that now. My very, very, very far off prediction right now is this. Because they talk about like dying for the organization and all that later, this is it, right? I think she will use Denji as essentially a pawn, right? Then Denji will come very, very close to death or something like that. And then she'll realize that she doesn't really want him to die because of her. And then she's going to sacrifice her or something like that. I feel like something like that is going to happen. Their relationship is very, very sus. Feels like she's playing him a lot. And basically everyone around her for that matter. And also, side notes. The shots of his like little upset lip, right, as he's getting dragged away, that's another very, very small detail that was almost an uncanny level of realism. But again, the animation is just excellent throughout. Then we get the very interesting pair up between Aki Hayakawa and Denji. So this is where I got like serious procedural dramas, I guess. Like a serious Western procedural drama type series, where you have one character that is in some way special, and the other is like just a normal police officer or something like that. I feel like that's the archetype the both of them have. Where Aki is basically like the straight shooter, right? He's just your police officer that just wants to do his job. And Denji is the super dude who has extraordinary abilities. And they are so different in personalities that basically whenever they interact, it just blows up in their faces, right? So think of something like Lucifer and Chloe originally. I don't know, even like in Scorpion or something like that. It's that typical vibe. And again, we get like a brief crowd shots where we just see a lot of people, basically a crowd. And how detailed the faces are is just like, sheesh. The animation budget they must have is ridiculous. And I love it. I love it. And then we get to a very, very funny part of this episode, right? Aki lures Denji into like a side street. He begins to beat him up, right? He basically says that, I'll tell Makima that you ran away, you got scared and all that. And then Denji does some very, very illegal things by targeting a weak spot on a man's body multiple times. And the fact that they added the ding noise as he just kicked him is like the cherry on top there. I was laughing out loud the entire way through. A war crime to say the least. Yes. And the fact that he just repeatedly kicked him on the ground is like, bro, you should know that this is not a thing. I mean, you sold one of yours, right? We talked about that last episode. You should know. You should know. Very, very bad of Denji. We don't do that. I wrote in my notes, Denji uses very illegal techniques, though. And the music in this scene was so groovy for some reason. It was like, I don't know what the genre is, but it was super groovy, and I really, really liked it. And yeah, and then I wrote in my notes, Denji, come on, man, stop kicking him in the nuts, man. I mean, that was just evil. That was just downright evil. I mean, devils even aren't as scary as Denji, it appears like. There's like a really, really good shot of like the windowsill falling, and the shadow was really, really good. But I guess I should probably stop talking about the animation in every single scene, because I don't know what their budget is, but it's clearly very, very big. Yeah, and here they continue talking about how Denji is locked in basically with them until he dies. And here I wrote, a deal with the devil in more ways than one, huh? So this is basically where, yeah, I was full in on the fact that Makima is not exactly your savior type. Feels like she's being set up as a master manipulator more than anything else, so we'll see how that goes. Because she appears to be set up as super likable to us as the audience as well, and I'm always very, very weary of that. That seems very sus. And then again, the animation, I just wrote, such a cozy shot of the city, the warm sunset is so good. And then I also wrote, please give me a Death Note series with this level of animation. I don't know why Death Note just popped into my mind when I looked at this shot, but it did. The animation here is incredible. Like, the establishing shots, every single establishing shot we get, I just want a wallpaper of that. People on Wallpaper Engine subreddit, please get to work. These are too good not to be made into wallpapers. Oh, and literally the next shot, we get the shots of the jam and Denji eating. And again, like, jam has never looked so good. I almost wanted some jam myself. Yeah, and then I wrote a whole bunch about the animation even more. The detail in each and every shot is insane. Look at the background buildings. I talked about like the dark style of the animation. And then we get into the actual plot of this episode. Or I guess, not really like the core plot, but one of the subplots. We see Denji and the samurai dude whose name I already forgot. It's Aki, right? Yeah, Aki. So they go on this first little mission. And this is where I wrote, this is a Western plot type of deal, right? Where we have two very unlikely partners, and they're like forced to work together because of some coincidence, and one of them is super goofy, the other is super straight and cold. I love that vibe. I mean, Lucifer was one of my favorite series of all time, basically, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that seeing them play off of each other was really, really cool. If that's what we're going for from now on, right, Denji is going to be the goofball and is going to be paired up with characters with whom he is very, very different with, I'm on board. I don't know if this is just a thing for this episode and we're going to get like a big overarching plot. Again, I've got no idea what to expect from the series, or if it is going to be like a monster of the week type of deal, case of the week type deal, something like that. I am fully on board. So if we're going to see like proper ones that take place over an entire episode or maybe even multiple, I'm on board. I'm on board. I saw people complaining about the washed down color palette for the first episode, but I think it's suited to exactly, like, washed down color palette, no. I feel like that is very, very deliberate, right? Because in this episode, we also saw a very, very large, I guess, gradient, saturation scale. What would you call it? I don't know. But yeah, because when we got to their first case, all the colors were like pretty cold too. But the colors were super warm exactly when Denji was sort of happy, right? Like, I mean, the shot of the jam, right? The warm sunset scenes when he was like talking to Makima and all that. I feel like color is used very, very deliberately here. So you definitely won't catch me complaining. And again, if we got, I've been saying this so much, but I just want more dark series. And the animation when we get to like them actually going into the apartment and it's sort of dimly lit and all that, I just want more dark anime. Give me a new Death Note, give me a new monster, give me a new I don't know, like Attack on Titan even. Series like that. I just want that type of vibe. I need it. Obviously, he fights off the devil, he chops off its head. And again, the animation, I just wrote the reflection on the window in all caps. We see, like, Denji being pushed up against the window. And the reflection, like, of his face on the glass. Like, who does these shots? Nobody had to actually add the reflection, but they did. And it looks so, so good. And they do it multiple times too. But of course, here, in terms of the plot, we hear that Denji does actually... He says... I don't know whether all of this was actually played up for the joke or not. Because he does say that he feels somewhat bad for the devils. Right? Whereas Aki says that he wants to hurt them as much as possible and that his entire family was killed in front of them. But then, Denji says that he just wanted, like, the magazines and the posters or whatever. He just didn't want to get them dirty. So, here I was left asking, like, is there actually, like, being set up some sort of thing where Denji is going to play both sides and maybe he's going to, like, meet a devil that is sort of like him, right? Where they're not just, like, purely evil, and maybe he's going to be, like, the bridge there? Or was it purely for the joke? Was it purely for him to get the magazines? I don't know. Again, here I wrote, I mean, yeah, sure, he doesn't have anything to fight for, but again, he's a very, very thirsty boy. That was some good comedy there. And yes, I also wrote he's giving me serious Lucifer vibes. If you've seen Lucifer, in like the early parts of the series, Lucifer also got up to this sort of stuff, right? Where he would just lie about the things he's doing just because, like, he basically got into trouble all the time. All of that was pretty fun. I very much want to see him go on, like, another mission with Aki, though. That should be a ton of fun. Their personalities are so drastically different. I want to see the trouble they get into. Next up, we get into another sort of mission. I guess we cut a bit forward, and we meet Power. At first, I mean, as I said, I was sort of confused with the whole Fiend deal, but I guess that makes sense now. I must have missed, like, a line of dialogue or something. So they basically head out, and again, Denji basically agrees to work with her just because he's a very, very thirsty boy. And all that makes sense. She has horns, which is pretty cool, I guess. Her design is also, again, the subtle sort of way of showing who she is, right? She has the uniform, but she has a jacket of her own, which she, like, throws down her shoulders, then throws it back up. Just those small details to set her apart from everyone else while still being in uniform. Those are those small narrative things that I really, really like. They walk on the roof, and then we have a shot of a cat. And again, I just wrote, oh my god, the detail. Look at the cityscape behind them. Look at the cat. Look at the skies. Literally every shot is brilliant. I'm honestly a little bit tempted to look through, like, the cityscape shots to see if they've actually, like, reused them anywhere. But on initial viewing, I didn't catch a single case of them reusing animation. So it feels like they did all the backgrounds each and every time, which is an insane amount of work. Though I think that cat there is a bit sus. Is it just there for the sake of having a cat chilling on the roof? I don't think so. Regardless, animation was cool. Their dynamic does seem to be sort of like, I guess I would call it like sort of a sibling type vibe between them. The both of them seem to be a lot more on the same page than with Aki. So maybe that's going to be that, right? Denji is going to clash with Aki, and then they're both going to dunk on Aki, right? Just talk about like how he's too much of a straight shooter or something like that. Curious to see what their dynamic is like. I'm guessing that they have, because I think I remember in like the trailers, I think there were more people. So are there still characters like of the organization that we're yet to meet? I don't remember exactly, but I think there are. And then yeah, we get to the sea cucumber devil, which was the most random thing ever, and we get the trailer shot, which I've seen like 50 million times, of Power just jumping off of the roof and getting a hammer and then just smashing it with basically a single hit. That was really, really cool. I absolutely love her power. The fact that like her blood turns into a weapon, that is absolutely awesome. Not gonna lie, kind of like it more than the Chainsaw Man aspect of it. I kind of feel like her power is even more versatile. I'm curious to see if she can actually make more things other than her hammer, right? Maybe she could whip out like dual swords or something like that. Maybe she could use it as armor. Maybe she can make a shield and a sword. Curious to see what her powers are all about, basically. I do also think I remember some scenes of her like surfing around on it. That might totally be me making stuff up. I don't know. We're probably going to explore their powers a lot more because like so far it does seem like all of them have unique powers. So we're going to get a sort of a JoJo vibe where you don't really expect what you're going to go up against. So I'm really excited about that. And if they're on the scale of power, which seems weird to say, but you get what I mean. I think we're going to get some really, really interesting fights. So now I'm basically just curious to see whether we are entering a sort of a monster of the week type deal or not. That's what I want to get clear. Or is there an overarching narrative? Because so far there doesn't seem to be one. And because we're already at the end of episode 2, I feel like if we had some big overarching story, we would have seen some of it. That said, all of this may totally just be the prologue, and I don't really have any idea. The only thing we do here, which again does seem like a very Western storytelling type of thing, is that their little division is super experimental, and if they don't have like results, they're going to be shut down. That's a pretty typical storytelling tool of having this. You have like the police office, right, and then you have someone with again super abilities or something like that, and that they're like their own little spin-off, and they're sort of pushed harder than everyone else. That's a very Western thing, I feel like. So I'm curious to see how it's done here. Overall, I think it was a slower episode than the previous one, but a very interesting one nonetheless. I'm curious to see how much material it actually adapted, because it feels like it was quite fast, but compared to the first episode, it was quite a bit slower. Because we covered a lot of ground in this one, to be fair. We like got to see them move in. We got to see them like meet up with Makima multiple times. We got to see them already clash multiple times. There's a lot that happened in this episode. It's sort of weird how the pacing in this one felt. Because it felt like a slower episode, even though I wouldn't really say it was. But yeah, it's showing a lot of promise. Very excited to see what the next one is all about. Very excited to find out more about the magic system, because I'm really vibing with it so far. The only thing that's had me scratching my head ever since the first episode is why the hell are Denji's teeth so weird? What's up with his teeth? Because Power's teeth are also super jagged, right? But what's up with Denji's teeth? I just looked it up. Cucumber Devil shows up in chapter 5 of the manga, so they must be going pretty fast. They adapted 4 chapters for this episode, it seems. That's ridiculous. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because we got a lot of variety in the things we saw, but it doesn't feel like we covered a lot of ground. It's really weird. It's really weird, because the episode felt slower than episode 1, even though clearly it wasn't. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I enjoyed the second episode far more. Honestly, I'd have a hard time saying which one I preferred, because the first one was obviously entirely set up, right? And another thing that I still haven't really talked about, we haven't seen anything about Makima. This is why I said I'm getting Gus Fring vibes from her. She is just there in her suit and tie, and she's not doing anything. The Aki dude at least has a sword. You can figure out what he's all about, right? He's going to use a sword. But with Makima, something tells me her power is gonna be very different, if she even has a power. I don't know. I'm still unsure whether Denji turned off his devil powers, and it just so happened when Makima hugged him of it, or it was literally Makima who did it. Ooh, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, what if it was Makima who turned off his powers? I do feel like, based on what we've seen, I do think it was just her hugging him, right? Because, first of all, he's a very thirsty boy. Second of all, it's sort of like, from an emotional point of view, it sort of seemed to fit in that scene. But then again, the fact that it fits couldn't still mean that it was actually her power, right? It might have been exactly that, to sort of subvert what we expect. And Makima actually turns out to be essentially capable of turning off all of them immediately if she wants. Which would be a interesting interesting power for someone who looks to be a mastermind of sorts. I'm super intrigued in who she is, basically. Because everything we've seen of her right now, she legitimately looks like Gus. A very sus Gus. And I like myself a sus Gus. Oh, let's talk about censorship. Because I feel like we're pushing some boundaries with the stuff that we're saying here. I feel like a lot of this is very, very gruesome and very, very explicit, which is not something you see a lot in anime. They swear a lot, and they're generally very mature. Obviously, it is targeted at mature audiences, right? But still, not something you see a lot in anime. That message got flagged by Twitch, but yes, censorship really doesn't appear to be a problem here. Yeah, the message automatically got flagged by Twitch. At least I see them, though. It's not like they just get lost into the void. I guess I'll wrap it up. So, again, a really, really good episode. I'll definitely be back next week. I think I'm going to turn this into a series. Who knows? Maybe this will be my little podcast that never was. I've always wanted to make a podcast, but I've never had a solid idea. I've even talked to a few people about starting a podcast. It's been an interesting process that has never went through. And it's a ton of fun. I like talking about it. So yes, we'll be back. We'll be back next week. And it'll be glorious. Alright. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And I'll see you whenever I see you. Bye-bye.